You are sitting in a quiet cafe in a city you have never visited before. Someone drops a silver spoon onto a ceramic saucer. A stranger laughs by the window. And in a split second, a cold shiver runs down your spine. You have lived this exact moment before. You know the sound of that spoon. You know the exact angle of the afternoon light on the wooden table. You even feel, with chilling certainty, that you know what the stranger is about to say next. For about 3 seconds, reality feels like an old movie you have already watched. Then, just as suddenly as it arrived, the feeling vanishes into thin air. You look around, your heart beating slightly faster, left with a lingering sense of eerie disorientation. Human beings have spent centuries trying to explain this feeling. In the 19th century, French philosopher Émile Biot, RAC gave it the name we still use today, déjà vu, literally translating to already seen. Before modern neuroscience entered the room, people came up with all sorts of romantic and terrifying explanations. Some believed it was proof of past lives, a brief leak from a previous reincarnation. Others thought it was precognition, a forgotten dream coming true in real time. Or perhaps a temporary tear in the fabric of the universe where the parallel dimensions briefly scraped against each other like ships passing in the night. It's easy to see why we invent such mystical theories. The sensation does not feel like a normal thought. It feels profound, spooky, and intensely real. Yet the actual biological truth is far stranger than any ghost story. You are not remembering a past life, and the multiverse is not glitching. Your brain is simply having a microscopic electrical misfire, a momentary sync error in the delicate machinery that stitches your past, present, and future together. To understand why this happens, we have to look at how your brain usually constructs reality. Most of us imagine our brain as a video camera that records the world in real time, faithfully capturing sights, sounds, and smells in, storing them neatly into memory folders. But your brain is not a camera. It is a master illusionist. Everything you experience as the present moment is actually a slightly delayed broadcast. It takes roughly 80 milliseconds for the light hitting your retinas, the vibrations entering your eardrums to be converted into electrical impulses, travel along neural cables, and get processed by your cortex. Your brain works tirelessly behind the scenes to sync all these different signals so that the sound of a voice matches the movement of a person's lips. At the exact same time, your brain has to perform the completely different tasks with every piece of information it receives. First, it has to perceive what is happening right now in the present. Second, it has to evaluate whether this information is new or familiar. These two tasks are handled by separate neural circuits that usually work in flawless synchronization. Deep inside your temporal lobe, nestled on both sides of your brain, it's the rhinal cortex in the hippocampus. Think of the rhinal cortex as your brain's automatic familiarity detector. It's like an alarm system that scans everything around you and flags whether an object, a face, or a place is something you have encountered before. The hippocampus, on the other hand, is the head librarian. When the familiarity alarm rings, the hippocampus goes to the shelves, pulls out the specific file, and tells you the exact context. Yes, that is David. You met him at a barbecue 2 years ago. He was wearing a blue shirt, and you talked about gardening in normal life. These two systems communicate constantly, but every once in a while, they drop the call. Imagine you walk into an unfamiliar library. As you step through the door, your sensory pathways experience a tiny, imperceptible delay, just a few milliseconds of lag. One neural pathway delivers the visual data of the room to your brain's processing center an instant before the rest of the sensory context arrives. Because of this microscopic timing error, your rhinal cortex processes the room first and mistakenly fires off a powerful signal familiar. We know this. A fraction of a second later, the conscious part of your brain catches up and tries to make sense of that signal. It asks the hippocampus, okay, where do we know this from? The hippocampus searches the archives and comes back empty-handed. I have never seen this library in my entire life. The result is that bizarre, uncanny collision we called déjà vu. Your brain is receiving a chemical signal of intense familiarity, while your logical mind knows with absolute certainty that the experience is brand new. It is familiarity without context. An alarm ringing in an empty room with no fire to be found. Neuroscientists call this the dual processing theory. It is essentially the biological equivalent of your web browser loading the same page twice, 10 milliseconds apart, confusing the second version for a historical file from yesterday. There is another fascinating theory, discovered by cognitive psychologist Drive. and Cleary at Colorado State University, known as the Gestalt familiarity hypothesis. Dr. Cleary wanted to know if a specific physical layout could trigger déjà vu without us realizing it. In her experiments, she placed participants inside virtual reality environments, virtual towns and houses created like something out of a video game. She would take a person to a virtual museum with a specific arrangement of pillars, hallways, and doorways. Later, she would place them in a completely different setting, such as a futuristic train station. The colors, textures, and objects were entirely new, but the geometric layout, the exact spatial blueprint, was identical to the museum they had visited earlier. When participants entered the train station, they experienced a sudden, overwhelming wave of déjà vu. Their conscious minds could not recognize the museum, but their subconscious spatial mapping system recognized the hidden geometry. This happens in real life all the time. You might walk into a living room in another country and suddenly feel like you have lived there before. What you don't realize is that the placement of the couch, the angle of the window, the distance to the bookshelf perfectly mirror your grandmother's living room from when you were 3 years old. The details are new, but the spatial skeleton is an exact match. Your brain recognizes the pattern, but fails to retrieve the original source, creating the illusion of an eerie psychic connection. Now, if you look at the demographic data, an interesting pattern emerges. Who experiences déjà vu the most? It is not elderly people, whose memories are naturally fade. It peaks dramatically in young people between the ages of 15 and 25, and then steadily declines as we grow older. It also happens significantly more often to people who are tired, stressed, highly educated, and those who travel frequently. For years, people wondered why a young, sharp brain would experience more memory glitches than an older one. The answer reveals something profound about what déjà vu actually is. In 2016, a research team led by Kira O'Connor at the University of St Andrews used functional magnetic resonance imaging to scan the brains of people while deliberately inducing déjà vu in the lab. Most scientists expected to see the memory centers of the brain, like the hippocampus, lighting up like a Christmas tree during the experience. But that is not what happened. Instead, the areas that became intensely active were the frontal regions of the brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, logic, and terror monitoring. Dr. O'Connor realized that déjà vu is not a sign of your memory failing. It is a sign of your brain's fact-checking system working at peak performance. When you are young and your brain is full of energetic neurotransmitters and rapid electrical activity, minor misfiring happen naturally. A stray signal tells your brain that a new cafe feels familiar, but because your prefrontal cortex is sharp and vigilant, it immediately intervenes. It recognizes the conflict and says, hold on. That feeling of familiarity is an error. We have never been here. That very conflict, the conscious tension between the false feeling of familiarity and the factual realization of novelty, is what produces the subjective feeling of déjà vu. Older brains experience it less not because they never have misfiring, but because the frontal error checking system becomes slightly less sensitive to the discrepancy. In other words, when you feel déjà vu, you are literally watching your brain catch itself in a lie. Is your conscious mind tapping the biological gauge and correcting the compass in real time? There is something strangely beautiful about this. We spend our daily lives walking around under the assumption that our perception is a direct, unfiltered window into objective reality. We trust our eyes, we trust our ears, and above all, we trust the feeling of our own memories. Déjà vu is one of the rare moments when the curtain is pulled back. For 3 brief seconds, you get to feel the gears turning inside your own skull. You realize that the present is not an automatic truth, but an intricate, fragile story constructed millisecond by billions of microscopic cells trying their best to keep up with the world. When the machinery stumbles, even for a heartbeat, the line between yesterday and today blurs. The feeling is haunting, but it is also a quiet reminder of how complex it is to simply exist in a single moment of time. The next time a cold wave of déjà vu washes over you in a crowded room or on an empty street, don't worry about past lives or tears in the space-time continuum. Smile at the spoon dropping on the saucer. Take a deep breath and appreciate the silent, tireless editor inside your head, quietly fixing the script so you can keep living the story. If you enjoy these quiet dives into the hidden mechanics of human psychology and the strange architecture of the mind, take a moment to subscribe. We explore the quiet questions of what it means to think, remember, and exist every week. Until next time. Pay attention to the present moment even if it feels like you have lived it once before.